Life of Pi, summary of chapters 47 to 54. When morning came, Pi saw that the zebra was still alive, even though organs spilled out of a hole in its body. Pi was horrified to watch its eyes blink, to see that something so wounded could still live. The hyena and orange juice were still very tense around one another. It was a relief when the zebra finally died. Pi was weak and scared. Suddenly, the hyena attacked Orange Juice. Pi was certain she would be killed, but he had underestimated her. She hit the hyena over the head. Pi said her action made his heart melt with love and admiration and fear. Pi was surprised that Orange Juice could be ferocious, because he had seen her only as a caring mother. Orange Juice, though, could not win the fight. She was not as strong, and she was not by nature an attacker. When the hyena recovered from the blow Orange Juice had struck him, the hyena went for her throat. Pi said that as she died, her eyes and whimpers reminded him strongly of human behavior. Pi knew he was next. He cried, he says, not because of all he had lost, or even fear of his own death. He cried because he was so weak and tired. He had to get some rest. He moved toward the hyena and saw that Orange Juice lay next to the zebra. Orange Juice was in a position like Christ on the cross, but she had been beheaded. Pi was ready to throw himself uselessly at the hyena when he saw Richard Parker's head. Chapter 48. Pi says that his father bought Richard Parker from a hunter. The hunter named the cub Thirsty, but a clerk mistakenly listed the cub's name as Richard Parker and the hunter's name as Thirsty. Pi's father thought it funny, so Thirsty stayed known as Richard Parker. Note: please notice that Pi's original name of piscine refers to water, and so does Richard Parker's original name. Chapter 49. Pi wakes up the next morning hungry and thirsty. He has no hope of survival, so he becomes reckless. Pi says he was like a tennis player who, when losing, suddenly begins to take risks that pay off. Pi was thirsty because he had consumed nothing for 3 days. A 450-pound tiger, one that he somehow had not seen for 2.5 days, was going to kill him soon anyway. Why not look for drink and food? Shouldn't a lifeboat have some supplies somewhere? When Pi decided to search for water, Richard Parker was not in sight. The hyena was, but Pi now thought of it as a ridiculous dog. When compared to Richard Parker, the hyena was like splinters when compared to falling trees. Pi thought his father must have sedated the tiger for the trip. That and seasickness would explain why Pi had not seen the tiger for a couple of days. Pi thought the hyena had not immediately attacked the zebra due to Richard Parker. Chapter 50. Pi describes the lifeboat in great detail. He says it is 3.5 feet deep, 8 feet wide, and 26 feet long. Pi now tells us that the boat's interior open area is 20 feet long and 5 feet wide, and everything is orange, a good Hindu color. Pi says as time went on, he made new discoveries of things in the boat that could save his life. Chapter 51. Pi needs to find food and water, but he sees none. Surely a lifeboat must have some supplies. They must be under the tarp, with Richard Parker. Pi unfastened the tarp from the front of the boat and rolled it back toward the center. Richard Parker was right below him. Pi saw a box with a shiny hasp. Pi found cans of drinking water and supplies. The locker lid opened toward the bench, so by standing on the lid, Pi was a little protected from Richard Parker. Now Pi just needed to find a can opener. No luck, but he was able to use a hook that had held the tarp down. He quickly drank 4 cans of water. Next, Pi found cartons of emergency rations. Pi was a vegetarian, but he ate the biscuits, which were made with fat, anyway. Pi saw that he had enough food for 93 days and enough water for 124. Pi said, "Thank you." Chapter 52. Pi finds more things and makes a list. You can look at those, but what I'm particularly interested in is showing that at the end he says, 1 boy with a complete set of light clothing but for 1 lost shoe, 1 spotted hyena, 1 Bengal tiger, 1 lifeboat, 1 ocean, 1 God. Chapter 53. Pi wakes the next morning afraid for his life, afraid of the daily struggle to survive, and afraid of dying and missing out on a happy life. He has to do something about Richard Parker. Pi feels himself giving up, but then he hears a voice in his heart and vows that as long as God is with him, he will not give up. As soon as Pi makes his vow, Richard Parker roars. Pi makes a raft using oars, life jackets, his life preserver ring, and buoyant rope. Pi looks up from his work and sees Richard Parker. The tiger silently attacks the hyena, who dies without a whimper as the tiger crushes his throat. Richard Parker turns and stares at Pi. Suddenly, a rat runs up to the top of Pi's head. The tiger approaches, but he does not like the way the tarp gives way under his front paws. He pauses. Pi grabs the rat and throws it straight into the tiger's mouth. The rat disappears, and its tail looks like a spaghetti noodle sucked into a mouth. Richard Parker turns away from Pi. As the tiger eats the hyena, Pi gets all of the life jackets and the last oar. He improves his raft. He covers the hole in the center of the life preserver and makes a footrest. Pi ties his raft to the lifeboat and lowers himself down. He lies on his stomach and sees sharks. He is now 40 feet away from the tiger, but he misses the protection of the more stable lifeboat. Pi grabs hold of the rope attaching his raft to the lifeboat and pulls himself and his raft back to the boat. He hears the tiger eating and he decides to stay on his raft. So far, the sharks have not bothered him. He lets out some rope and moves away from the boat. Hours later, it begins to rain, and he moves back to the boat. He climbs on and gets a rain catcher, a plastic bag, a blanket, and the survival manual. He startles the tiger when he drops the locker lid, and Pi runs to his raft. He has a long, wet night. Chapter 54. Pi can't sleep, but he does use the rain catcher well and is able to drink. He knows he must come up with a plan to deal with Richard Parker. Pi has to get back to the lifeboat. Pi's possible plans to get rid of Richard Parker and their problems. Number 1, push him off the boat. Problem: tigers are heavy and can swim. 2, kill him with his 6 morphine syringes. Problem: would that be enough, and how could it be done? Number 3, attack him with available weapons. Problem: no way. Number 4, choke him with rope. Problem: suicidal. Number 5, poison him, set him on fire, electrocute him. Problem: with what? Number 6, wage a war of attrition. Wait for the tiger to die of starvation. Problem: it will be hard to survive on the raft. But Pi has supplies, and the tiger doesn't.